Whoops. Let's try that again. I'm Ben.
I'm Jen. Did we?
I believe we were muted.
Oh.
So there you go.
That was Lucy.
Yes.
And she left.
Yes, Lucy was the dog, to be clear.
And Jay Andrews here on time.
Yeah, how about that? Actually, if he wants to, maybe he could hop on for a minute at the very end, since on Sunday, I'm going to be gone, so I'm not going to be here to do a Sunday night debate breakdown. But Andy volunteered to fill in.
If you need any help, Jay Andrew, don't ask me.
And so I don't know a lot about what he has in mind. I know it's a debate about a very different subject. But in any case, that is coming up on Sunday. So what we are here to talk about right now.
Sorry, I was thinking about your theme song.
Some interpretive
I didn't
dancing.
get to do my dancing because I had Lucy on my lap. I can't see the comments because of the microphone, so maybe we could. Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, John Ross.
So we are going to be talking about David Hume today, but not facts and values, some other Hume stuff. So it's exciting. So the title of this essay that we're talking about, Hume essay, the link to early modern texts, where you can read the essays in the description, is on the immortality of the soul. But it's only a little bit about that. There's basically like the first page or so is really directly on the question of whether people have immortal souls, or whether there's a good reason to think that. Really what most of the essay is about is the afterlife and what would count as like a just afterlife, in particular, whether heaven and hell be just. So if anybody's ever seen the TV show The Good Place, they talk about a lot of philosophy.
If you have not, you ought to.
Yeah.
And not just speaking as philosophy nerds either. It's a good show.
It is. That's fun. And they reference a lot of philosophy on that show, but they never mention this essay, which really seems like it's missing a beat, because in the show there's a big to-do.
No spoilers.
To-do made of the fact that there's a good place and a bad place in the afterlife of the show. I don't think that's a big spoiler. But there's a character who says several times there should be a medium place. And in certain respects, that is what Hume is arguing in this essay.
Wasn't that one of the things?
Yeah, it's one of the things. One of the things. Certainly not the only thing.
Oh, well, if we're drinking.
So, in the very beginning, he's talking about whether we have mortal souls or not, and there's actually an interesting question about how much this is really what the essay is about, like to the extent that his point is skepticism about the idea of some sort of afterlife. Like I think there's an interesting question about how much of what he would say would apply to other ideas of the afterlife besides the one that was most culturally familiar to him when he was writing in 18th century Scotland, which would of course be that some people go to heaven and some people go to hell. There were people who believed in limbo and purgatory, but not many of them in Scotland. So that's not really who he was. He was writing. He was writing for. He was really writing for.
This is why you have me around.
Scottish and English Protestants, who pretty much thought that heaven and hell were the only options. And so, for example, I don't know how much of this would, like, if you're, I don't know, a Hindu and you believe in reincarnation, I don't know how much of this essay would really faze you. But interest in interesting question anyway. So the first part is the part that's most directly about metaphysics. He says, yeah, all right. Song lyrics.
Okay.
So he says that really there's no particular reason to think that there is not like a soul would be something other than regular material reality, right? It'd be something other than a brain, certainly. And that would...
Substances. These guys love to talk about substances.
Yeah, right. So like Descartes, all about the substances.
Mm-hmm. Not those substances.
Yeah, I don't know if he partook of substances, but he was all about talking about substances, meaning physical substance, mental substance. The idea,
the differences between the substances.
Right. That there is that. So for Descartes, there is extended stuff and thinking stuff. So extended stuff is stuff that takes up space.
Has a length, has a breadth, has a height.
Breadth. That's not a word I hear a lot.
Breadth.
Yeah.
Has a shape, has, various physical properties. And thinking stuff is the negation of all this. There's no positive definition for thinking stuff. It's just, whatever we're calling the physical stuff, the extended stuff, that's we don't say that about mental stuff. That's really all he has to offer about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever's doing the thinking and the feeling and all that business. But yeah, Descartes says very, very little about it. I mean, this is essentially one of Hume's criticisms. He doesn't specifically name check Descartes, but of philosophers who think this way in the first section of the paper.
It's all about Descartes. There for a while it was all about Plato, isn't that what somebody? It's all a footnote.
Yeah, it's Whitehead
to Plato, but once Descartes came along, now it's all a footnote to Descartes, really.
Okay, so
my mom agrees.
Yeah, Francine's a big
Descartes fan.
Hi,
Mom.
So, and Kant, she really likes Kant.
She does.
So, all right. Dheeraj says, I'm Hindu. I believe death is just like a restart, but on the Xbox. Okay, fair enough.
But on the Xbox, don't you restart exactly where don't you do the same thing over and over then?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Because on reincarnation, I think the standard idea is that you're in some sense, you're morally restarting in that Xbox way. That as you, I don't know, progress from being an amoeba, up to being a cat or whatever the level.
Cat's at the top.
Okay, whatever the levels are. Then
you when you get to the cat, you've basically graduated.
Right. So you have to do your time as a person, and then you get to be a cat.
Exactly.
The next time.
Exactly.
All
Cats are gods. We know this.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think that's a joke that's been in a couple of syllabus images, or at least PowerPoint images. Descartes before Dehorse. But
Descartes goes to a bar. He orders a scotch. He finishes it. The bartender says, "Descartes, would you like another?" He says, "I think not." It vanishes.
Right. There you go.
That never gets the laugh I'm expecting, and don't know why.
It's a big mystery. Why
Philosophy jokes are not that funny.
They're really not. Yeah. The only good one is, behaviorism, it's a view about, mental states are understood in terms of behavioral states, and knowledge of mental states is understood in terms of coming from your observation of behavioral states. So two behaviorists are in bed, and one turns to the other and says, "It was great for you. How was it for me?" So, that one's kind of funny. But
Is it though?
it is. But yeah, that's like the only funny philosophy joke.
Yeah, there's Descartes with the Descartes before the horse, and then all the Kant stuff, which is way overworked.
Yeah, when I did
That's
the
about it.
Beginner's Guide to Kant bonus episode for patrons with Russ Briglia and Ryan Lake and Matt McManus, which actually they ended up being a two-parter. And
Ryan's my favorite person.
That hurts so bad.
In a different way.
And, there was a two-parter. There will be a three someday, but yeah, I think in the second one especially, there were probably an indefensible number of Kant jokes. But
in my Kant PowerPoints, there's also an indefensible number of those memes.
Right. So.
I'd like to stop philosophizing, but I can't.
Yeah. So.
We look like we're on the substances, actually, or at least I do.
Do you?
I don't know. Maybe. My dancing at the beginning kind of.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I'm a little out of it. Definitely. I have been.
He's been working all day.
I really have. And not on anything to do with politics for once, because or teaching. Usually, it's one of those other two things. That it's either like doing stuff for the show, or doing stuff for Jacobin, or working on the Hitchens book, or the book of Oscar and Mike Beggs.
We haven't even played Skip-Bo today.
Or teaching stuff, but in this case, it's actually a book about academic philosophy, which I wrote years ago, and I actually wrote the first draft of that book and turned it into the publisher
in 1967.
Feels like it. In 2018, and like just before I wrote "Give Them an Argument," and then like after I think I'd already written "Give Them an Argument," and I got back, so the academic book is called "Logic Without Gaps or Gluts."
Gluts. That's such a beautiful word.
Logic
Gluts.
Without Gaps or Gluts. How to solve the paradoxes without sacrificing classical logic. And I'd gotten the revisions back by like late summer 2018, and
he's still revising.
A lot has happened.
That is very true.
A lot has happened in the last couple of years. So
some good, some not so good, but a lot.
Yeah. So I am beyond embarrassed by how many extensions I've had to ask for on this thing. So the most recent deadline is tomorrow, and I am going to get it in tomorrow if it kills me, because I cannot ask for another extension. So
we might not actually play Skip-Bo today at all.
So I have, so I have been spending all day like staring at the computer trying to like revise the stuff about the liar paradox and all that. But there's actually one lame philosophy joke in that book, since it's Graham Priest is one of the major figures that I'm talking about.
Is that the guy that you blew off that time because we had a date?
I rescheduled. I wouldn't say I blew him off.
I would. It's more romantic that way.
So yeah.
If you don't know what Skip-Bo is, you should get it from Amazon. It's so much fun. I think we talked about it one week. You must not have been here that week. See what you miss when you miss a week, but it's so much. It's a card game. It's so much fun.
So Graham Priest is an advocate of a view called Dialethism.
The big words.
True. Aletha in Greek for truth. So two truths. So that's the idea.
Ism.
Ism, meaning ism. So dialethism is the position that there are some Uh, there are.
See, now you're covering up. There we go.
There are some sentences, like if I say this sentence that I'm saying right now is false, there are all sorts of solutions to the paradox that creates, but the Dialetheist says that sentence is a Dialetheia, so it can actually be true and false at the same time. And so Graham Priest is the leading advocate of Dialetheism, so the lame philosophy joke that made it into the book, I heard from Gareth Young, who was back then a graduate student at the University of Glasgow when I went to a conference there in 2012. And
without me, I might add.
Yeah, it's the months before we started dating, but
when did we start dating?
March 2013.
Okay. I'm bad with years.
Yeah, well, I don't think they have it in stock. You can always check. Or
I got it from my brother-in-law. I don't know where he got it.
Or urge them to put it in stock. So the lame philosophy joke mixed into the book from Gareth Young is an Irish priest, a Scottish priest, and Graham Priest walk into a bar.
It's already bad.
The Scottish priest says, "I'll have a whiskey." The Irish priest says, "I won't." And Graham Priest says, "I'll have what they're having." So anyway, that's probably the appropriate reaction to that joke. But yeah. Anyway, so Hume.
Yeah, isn't that why we're here?
It is why we're here. He says that. So he's basically criticizing this view that Descartes and lots of other people have, that that reality is composed of both physical substance, Descartes' extended stuff, and mental substance, Descartes' thinking stuff. And Hume's criticism is basically what Jenn just said, that it's okay, I want you to tell me a lot more about this thinking stuff, right? Like what,
you can't just give a negative definition. You have to say something about what it is. Don't just tell me what it is not.
Yeah.
Judas Priest. The bomb.
Yeah, I like Judas Priest. Yeah, I not only have Nathan Robinson's book, Why You Should Be a Socialist, I have a copy with a very nice note from him in the opening flap. Refers to me as his favorite radical logician, although I'm not sure how many he knows.
You're my favorite radical logician.
Aw. So in any case, so yeah, Hume says, well...
Wait, so have you read the book and do you like it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you didn't say
that.
Sorry,
you're right. I didn't. Yes. I think everything that Nathan writes is worth reading. I think that I don't always agree with everything that he writes, but I think it's all worth reading.
I've seen it lying around the house. That's the extent of my engagement with it.
You know, I think that it's like in all seriousness, what I really like about Nathan's writing is that he's extremely clear. It's never boring, and he's not like announcing his conclusions, as if he's like bringing down truths, from on high and generously sharing them with you. He's always sort of taking you through his thought process in this very clear way. So even when I sometimes will read something and find that I disagree, with where he ultimately lands, I think he's really valuable to read just for that, right? So like people for, I don't know, the last few months, it seems like, have been obsessed with critical race theory. And a very common talking point about it is that lots of people have opinions on it, but they don't really know what it is. And Nathan wrote an essay about it, the actual academic theory, not just like people calling everything.
I have opinions on things, but I don't know what they are.
Yeah. And he has a very clear current affairs article about the actual original academic theory, and like, even though now that I have a much better grasp on it, because I've read the article, I now know, okay, here are what my criticisms are of the actual thing, not the sort of hysterical bogeyman, but the thing. And so I think it's like, and I think Nathan's much more unambiguously positive, but whatever. I mean, I think it's it's worth reading for that. I think that we could use a lot more people writing about the things he writes about, who are as clear and as compelling as writers as he is. But who was a clear and compelling writer in the 18th century? David
Hume.
That's right.
He actually is, especially if you compare him with a lot of those other fools that we make students read and drive them to tears. Hume is, boy, he's a step up.
Yeah, exactly. Like Hume, yeah, especially for 18th century philosophers, he is extremely clear. Like that is definitely one of the biggest virtues of his writing, and he says, okay, well, people say, right, these other philosophers say that we have these immaterial souls. They haven't really told us anything about what they, immaterial. As Jenn keeps saying, it's a negative description. It doesn't tell you anything about what this is. It just tells you what it isn't. It's something other than material. And he kind of says, okay. Out of famous philosophers of the past whose names start with H, Hume is much clearer than Hegel or...
That's what I tell my students when they start complaining.
Or Heidegger is another
why don't you go look up some of these other H people and come back and talk to me?
Yeah.
That's as bad as some Kant joke.
So what's says, all right, but if for the sake of argument we do have one of these things, you tell me I have one, I don't know that, maybe we do, maybe we don't, is pretty much Hume's position, and which is not surprising if you read his inquiry concerning human understanding. He's very rough on conclusions that don't seem like they can be derived from just sort of logic and definitions on the one hand, or from actual observation of the world on the other hand. And he always wants to know, okay, if you have this other way of finding things out, clue me in on it.
Explain it to me.
What is it? But he, wow, that one's really bad. Believe Constans is a patron and hence one of the best people in the world, but man, that's bad. So Hume says, all right, like maybe we have these things and maybe we don't, but if we do, why is it that you assume that they're immortal?
Yeah.
That doesn't, we could have immaterial souls and they could like die with our bodies, or they could last for 10 years and then die, or whatever.
But it seems most likely that they die with our bodies, because doesn't everything else? We have no idea what this immaterial stuff is, so why would we not think of our soul as analogous to the rest of us when we die? And we all know what happens when we die, so why wouldn't our souls just go the same way? Yeah,
especially, could sharpen that by saying...
was that not sharp enough for you?
Well, it can always be sharper. Can make this like cut like a knife, baby. Go
right ahead.
No, but we can expand on the point. Let's put it that way. By saying that if I am not the mostly hairless biped that I see when I look in the mirror.
You got a lot of hair.
Yeah, hairless compared to monkeys and stuff, but but if that's not me, right? If that's not what's doing the thinking and the feeling, the perceiving, and all that good stuff, if instead it's this immaterial soul, well, what we do know from experience is that it seems to be affected by things that happen to my body. That if I get conked in the head then the immaterial soul don't think so good for a while, right?
They don't.
So all of that suggests that the two seem to be very closely linked, and if one gets weaker when the other does, then it's a very natural thought, at least, that the one would die when the other did.
We get old, we get senile. Kind of all goes together, except for people who start out senile.
Right.
Ben really does have good hair genetics. He really does.
Yeah, I am. I'm not all the sad things that could happen to me as I age. I'm not worried about balding.
No, not at all.
If you look at my dad, or back when he was alive, my dad's dad, I think it's not a big concern. But
Dad still has nice curly hair.
So yeah. Well, that's nice. Julian Carlson says the galaxy brain take. Socrates just made up the idea of an immortal soul to comfort his friends before his death. The sweetest guy. So
that is sweet.
Which honestly is kind of how the dialogue where he talks about that reads. Like his friends are very distraught, and so. But
they both do need eyebrow trims from time to time.
Yeah. J. Andrew World says, I think you and Lucy have the same amount of hair. It's just your different mask that makes you look mostly hairless. So he says, all right, one of the points that Hume makes about this in that first section is all of the things that we're actually familiar with that we can observe. I mean, if you're this immaterial stuff you're talking about doesn't seem like we can observe that, but all the things that we can observe don't last forever. That they break down into their component parts, and then maybe those particles become new things or whatever, but they don't stay in that form forever. That all the objects that we're familiar with eventually deteriorate and end. And so he asks, why is it I choose to believe that Jeffrey is talking about my awesome MSU shirt? But,
I'm sure he is.
No, I don't think he is. So why is it seems a little arbitrary that we assume that this supposed immaterial soul will last forever, unlike everything else? What's the reason to think that?
But what if it does?
But what if it does?
Should we care?
Why wouldn't we?
Well, if it exists before us, that has nothing to do with us. And if it exists after us, that also has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, so he says, when you think about the idea of a soul, I mean, if it's something, is this a eternal thing in both directions? If so, then, I don't know, before God attached the soul to be, although that's also confusing, but
when we think of our eternal soul or our immortal soul, we think of it as being us, that we are somehow connected, that what the essence of us is somehow connected in there, and there's no essence of us if we're not in existence yet. So
yeah, so which suggests that it is that if we have souls, they're only eternal in the one direction. They're created with us, or they are us. I don't know. Gets very confusing very quickly. Like I think Locke even has an example somewhere. I mean, most famously, Locke's example is about switching all of your mental states, the prince and the pauper. Cobbler. Prince and the Cobbler. Okay, Prince and the Pauper might be the name of something else, but
that's Mark Twain.
Okay,
I think it's Mark Twain.
Sounds right. So the Prince and the Cobbler is Locke, but I think Locke even has something somewhere about, okay, if your soul is somehow like wiped clean of all of your thoughts and feelings and perceptions and blah, 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 and somebody else's are put in there, right? Do you really think that you now have different thoughts, feelings, perceptions, etc., or would you think that you have a different soul?
Yeah.
And if you go with that, that actually takes us back to reincarnation, and there's a little bit of a tricky thing there, because when you talk about being reincarnated, saying you had past lives, the idea, it's like, well, there were these, you were, like, they'll say, people will say, like, oh yeah, you were, I don't know, whatever nonsense, the somebody who's gonna like give you do like past life regression or whatever, tells you, oh, you were Alexander the Great, nobody
what
ever,
does that mean though?
Nobody ever
you were Alexander the Great. Like I was Alexander the Great?
Right.
Really?
Right, exactly. Because it's like, okay, well, if Jenn is the reincarnation of Alexander the Great, in what sense was she Alexander the Great?
And does that mean that I am still, in some sense, I now am Alexander the Great?
Because
cool as that would be, I don't think so.
Yeah, because if you think about, well, okay, you certainly don't have the same body as Alexander the Great, and maybe you have the same.
No, I would not think so. Although, wasn't he short?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure back then.
Not that I'm short, but I think.
I mean, I'm sure.
Short for a man.
I mean, I'm sure in ancient Macedonia, nutrition was enough worse than right now.
Yeah.
That, like, everybody was like way shorter than us. Would be my guess, but yeah, no, that's a classic too. You were an Egyptian princess. Like nobody ever seems to have just been some like random schmuck.
I would love to be an Egyptian princess, actually.
Julian says, I totally was. I just don't remember the details.
Was an Egyptian princess?
Yeah. But
we were all Egyptian princesses.
But yeah, if you think, well, all right, if Alexander the Great is, soul is now Jenn's soul, then the soul, I mean, presumably Jenn has no memory of, I don't know, conquering Persia or whatever.
We can talk about that later.
So it's like, okay, no connection in psychological states whatsoever, right? Yeah. Like there are no memories, no, anything. And so you think, okay, is it really natural to describe that as saying she was Alexander the Great, or as saying that she and Alexander the Great had the same soul, right? Like,
are we the same person in some way? And you don't even have to think of soul as a religious thing. It can just be interchangeable with the mind.
Yeah, you can be a substance dualist without it being religious. You could just think. I mean, I think it's probably a very unusual combination of positions, especially now. But you could think.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be the kind of soul that goes to heaven type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember actually when after Quentin Smith died last year, I was looking up some old clips of him, which were always hilarious because, like, Quentin Smith, I should say, was a professor of mine in grad school.
Ben wrote a very lovely, what do you call those things? After he passed away.
Obituary?
Yeah, those things.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, it's called There Will Be Time, Quentin Smith, 1952 to 2020. It's in Arc Digital Media.
Somebody else my mom loves.
Loki.
As you know.
Sure. I do. So yeah, I was looking up old clips of Quentin, and which is always hilarious because, like, even when he was the most extreme embodiment of the sort of disheveled, like, professor image, and, like, even when he's on TV, he's got a tie on, but it's sort of skewed in a weird way, and his hair is all over the place. But there's a thing.
This is gonna be Ben in a few years. Like I said, you're gonna be Bernie, like a yelling, disheveled man.
That's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
I have brought up several times recently how much I liked the when Bernie was interviewed by Marine Dowd, and he brought along this handwritten list on like a piece of notebook paper of the topics he was willing to talk about. And when she would ask him questions that weren't on the list, he would like wave around the list. Like, talk about healthcare, infrastructure. I'm not going to talk about this. But, but in any case, like one of those, right? I mean, he was explaining why I didn't believe in an afterlife.
Wait, Bernie?
Quentin Smith. Bernie, as far as I know, has never publicly commented on that issue. It's not on the list.
Sorry.
Like, you're asking him about metaphysics. He's here to talk about healthcare and infrastructure. But yeah, Quentin, talking about why he didn't believe in afterlife. I thought it was actually kind of interesting because in the clip I watched, he didn't say, well, I think, minds are just brains or are functional states of brains or whatever. Maybe he thought that, but he didn't say that, right? What he said was, well, we don't have any examples of minds that aren't linked to brains, which is an interesting turn of phrase because that would be compatible with being a substance dualist, just like, the points that Hume is making here. So, then in the bigger part of should also say that there is a very problematic movement very early on in this essay where Hume where he just sort of casually says like, oh yeah, of course, like women's minds are very different than men's minds. Which
I need to go put on my apron and do the dishes. Excuse me. Because we don't have to think about we're in the domestic sphere, and that doesn't take as much brain power. So there you go.
Yeah, that's
thanks, Hume.
Yeah, do better, Hume.
Do better.
Yeah, next time, don't be born in 18th century Scotland.
Yeah, Hume.
All of these hideous ideas that are hideously outdated 3 centuries later. Yeah.
So moving on from that.
Yeah, in the second section, he starts in on his main subject, which is thinking about, all right, well, let's assume more or less, let's assume that we do have souls that outlast our bodies. Does it make sense? And really at this point, he's kind of shifting from metaphysics to ethics. Does it make sense morally that a just God would send some people to heaven for their eternal reward, and some people to hell for their eternal punishment, and those are the options, those are the destinations.
Yeah, because how many of us are infinitely bad and so deserve infinite punishment? How many of us are infinitely, well, besides me, how many of us are infinitely good and deserve infinite reward? I mean, we talk about this often. There's a thing that comes up, the idea of the eternal punishment of hell. How bad can somebody be that they would deserve that? But then on the other end, how good can somebody be that they would actually deserve the infinite bliss of heaven?
Yeah. I mean, Bernie, Hume, yes, David, there's a guy, I suppose I should allow to remain nameless for the purpose of this anecdote, but was someone.
It's all right. If I figure out who it is, I'll tell you.
I knew in Miami. Well, you'll know who it is.
Oh, I think I already know who it is.
But somebody we knew in Miami who taught early modern philosophy classes, and he had somebody in one of these classes turn in a paper that was there was so little actual writing in it. It was like 3/4 just quotations from him, and so this guy wrote at the bottom of the paper, David, excellent work as always. I only wish your co-author had lived up to your standard.
I don't actually know who that is.
All right, I'll tell you later. But in any case, yeah. Yeah, fair enough. That is a weird slip. It's because we were just talking about him, and anyway. So yes, I don't just vaguely identify all the people that I like, that like David Hume, Bernie Sanders,
Me.
Yeah. I've never once referred to Jenn as either of those things.
You did think I was Lucy once. You did talk to me as though I was Lucy, but that was a one-time thing.
All right then. So he says that most of us float in between vice and virtue. Hume is, if you read his second inquiry, the one on the foundations of morals, he's a non-standard kind of virtue theorist. So he thinks that rather than like being a consequentialist who thinks that that actions are right insofar as they have good consequences, or a deontologist and just thinking there's certain moral rules that that are innately right or wrong, whatever. He thinks, or at least a big part of his view is about virtue, character traits, and he's very charmingly direct when he talks about this. He's like, look, I mean, just think about whether you'd think highly of somebody for having a trait or not. That's what gets you which are the virtues. But he says most of us float somewhere between virtue and vice.
Some of us float closer in the virtue area, and some people float closer in the vice area. But yeah, nobody stays on the same half of the spectrum all the time.
Yeah. And so he says that if you think about it, and he's got this very funny line in there about how if you were to go about the world trying to separate the righteous from the wicked, so you could give the righteous a good meal, a good supper, and the wicked a good beating, then it would be very difficult.
Hi, J. Andrew.
It would be very difficult to sort out which was which, because the more you talk to people, and everybody who knows someone, the less clear it would be.
But is it though? Like I feel like I know you pretty well, and we have been married for 7 years. And if someone came up and said, "Do you think Ben deserves a good supper or a good beating?" I wouldn't be like, as the years have gone by, I've gotten less and less certain about that. I think it's pretty clear where
appreciate
people.
That,
That's doctor and doctor, bruh.
Hello.
No, really, I don't care. I tell people I work just as hard for that Mrs. as I work for that doctor. So
is that so?
It's all the same to me.
Really? All right. In all seriousness,
in all seriousness,
even in syllabi, I tell people to call me Ben. But anyway,
yeah, I want people to call me Jennifer. Most of the time, I cannot get them to call me Jen. Now that we moved to Georgia, it's very difficult to get them to even call me Jennifer. Some of them will call me Mrs. Jennifer, so that's cute. Anyway, but Hume makes it sound like, well, we can't put people into these. Oh, yes, we can. We can put people into categories. We know whether people are good or bad. Yeah, sure. Even Hitler had some good qualities. That doesn't make us question where he goes. Even the best of us have some bad qualities, but
Martin Luther King Jr. famously cheated on his wife a bunch.
Yeah, so but that's not going to be like, well, does that mean he deserves a good beating? No, because it's just I guess for some people that are closer to the middle, it is very Georgia. It might be hard to tell. Then I would say err on the side of caution. But yeah, I think for most people, it's not as difficult as he wants to make it sound.
All right. As probably a personality indication more than anything, but I think I'm much more sympathetic to Hume's point here.
Really?
But
I mean, think of the people that we know the best, or people that we don't know that well, and maybe that's just because we don't know them that well. But if we knew them as well as presumably God knows them, it can't be that hard.
All right. Well, we're not gonna start like pause this to start listing off people and classifying them as deserves a good supper, deserves a good beating.
Well, you said Ryan was a bad person. You put that in that PowerPoint that one time.
Yeah.
So we know where he goes.
There was
in your mind.
Ryan is one of my best friends, but
Ryan is one of the best people.
But there was a
Ryan Lake. Y'all know Ryan Lake.
Annual philosophy epistemology conference at the University of Miami, where three of us went to grad school, and they would invite somebody who'd finished up back, to be the alumni speaker. And
for some reason, they couldn't find anybody else. So at the last minute, they asked Ben, will you please come save us and give a talk? And this is actually a story that we tell a lot, because I always take my Kindle to these things when I actually go to these things, which I try to get out of as much as possible. But we had gotten this email, you grad students better show up. So I was like, fine, I'll show up for a talk. I'll make sure this person who sent out this email sees my face there, which worked out because he actually sat next to me. So he knew I was there. And I didn't turn on my Kindle a single time. And it wasn't because that dude was sitting next to me either. I wouldn't have cared. My face was there. That's all that mattered. And plus, he probably had his phone, his face in his phone anyway, because that was generally what he did. Although he was writing a paper and not doing something completely unrelated. But I did not turn on my Kindle a single time because Ben was actually very interesting. And after his talk, I went up to him and I told him I hadn't turned on my Kindle a single time. And he said, that's probably the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
And at that point, it was.
It was.
Not long later, the record was beaten. But in any case.
I have no idea why I was telling that story. Why was I telling that
I don't
story?
know, man.
How did we get there?
That's a very good question. But
I don't know how we got there.
Yeah. So at this...
Ryan.
So Ryan, since my specialization was in logic, not epistemology, and so I was trying to come up with a way to sort of craft like a talk to give.
See, they really were desperate.
That would be about both, so it would like fit with my interest, but it would like make sense as a lecture to give there, and Ryan said that if they ever invite him, he'll just give a talk about free will, which is what his specialization was, and he'll use the word no a couple times, so it'll count as epistemology, and that'll be that. And so I mentioned that at the beginning of my talk, and there was a slide with a picture of Ryan that said "bad person," but not a serious view.
Yeah, so I do think that Hume is going a little hard on we can't know what a person is like. Yes, we can. So we know if they belong in the good place or the bad place. Ryan is definitely a supper person.
Does anybody belong in the medium place?
What, like you want me to name some people?
No, just as a general thing.
I think we should err on the side of caution.
Like in other words, even if you think that Hume is wrong to suggest that it's like a common thing, like do you at least think that some people are ambiguous about whether they'd objectively deserve reward or punishment?
I think if we could know people the way that God because God's presumably the one that's
right
categorizing you, I probably don't think there are ambiguous people.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's somebody else my mom loves, Brian. It's all about the people my mom loves. Anyway.
Yeah. That is that Jander World says Elizabeth Warren placed herself in the medium place, and it's got the M in medium capitalized. All her plans were there because,
but not the P in place.
Yeah, because it's medium, like medium posts, like where you post essays, like.
Oh my God, the bad jokes continue.
Because this is something that Michael used to say that like. When people started talking about all of Elizabeth Warren's plans, he was like, "You don't just mean those like medium posts, do you?" And he was like, "Got this like 4-page medium post. You're making a big deal, but she has plans, like it's like it's a blog post. What are you talking about?" But yeah, the point that Paul makes in this chat about how infinite torment isn't exactly rehabilitative is actually kind of another point that Hume makes.
Mm-hmm, he does.
So he says that like any, I don't remember exactly the phrase that he uses, but it's like any human magistrate who's not like crazy or evil, right? Is something like that. But like any human magistrate who conducts himself in a reasonable way isn't going to punish somebody just to punish them. You know, it has to actually do some good.
Yeah. Because this seems to be just retribution, and what does that do for anybody?
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't like you can sort of, to see Hume's point, you can like rattle off there are all these traditional justifications of legal punishment, rehabilitation, deterrence, etc. Right, and
safety of the public.
It doesn't really seem like hell would serve any of these.
It doesn't.
Because like that's it, right? There's no, like nobody's being kept safe from you by being put in hell. The idea of hell, as opposed to like purgatory, but he seems to really be thinking of eternal heaven, eternal hell. It's not like you spend 50 years there and then it's like, all right, you've learned your lesson, you're now ready to to be integrated as a good citizen of heaven. So that's another one of his criticisms. Another point I think he also does make in that essay, I know he makes it a couple of different places in different essays, is that Hume is a determinist about causation. He thinks that not in the cheesy hippie way, everything has a reason, but everything has a cause, so like in the Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, I want to say chapter 9, the Liberty and Necessity, he has this, he talks about how we don't always know what causes things, but we shouldn't take that as a reason to think that there isn't. He has this metaphor about like a rural village where there's like a clock in the town square, and sometimes it might stop working, and all the peasants could say is it just stops working sometimes, but presumably a clockmaker could peer into the innards and see here's exactly what happened. And he has the same view about all causation, crucially including causation in the human noggin. Not the word he uses. And
no, that's not in this essay.
Okay,
but it is somewhere else.
Okay, so
I couldn't tell you where.
So a point that he makes a few times is that it's unreasonable to set things up in such a way that a result will be brought about, and then to condemn people who are like a intermediary link in the chain. Like if you, one way to see this, like Galen Strawson has an article, like a little essay, it was published in the New York Times, I think, on the website, called The Maze of Free Will. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he has this example about somebody who's walking past a Oxfam box. Oxfam's a charity in Britain, and they're walking past the Oxfam box, and they either donate or they don't donate. And this is presumably exactly the kind of thing that we want to say is free will. But Strawson's point as well. What's the cause? Let's say you walk past, you don't donate. What's the cause? Well, presumably it's a function of a bunch of psychological things about you, what you were thinking about at that moment, what emotions you're feeling, whether you were hungry and you were hurrying to lunch, whatever. And so those are causes, and then each of those things is caused by something, and each of those things is caused by something, and before you know it, you can trace it all back to stuff that happened before you were even born.
To the Big Bang.
Right. Trace it back to the Big Bang. And even if you do the kind of thing that people often think about when they think about free will, you engage in some sort of like moral reform. I'm going to be a different, better, less selfish person. And people do. But it says, okay, but what was the cause of you making this decision to morally reform. And it's going to be like any other decision. There are going to be psychological causes, which can have causes, which can have causes. And even though Hume is a compatibilist when it comes to like humans judging each other, he thinks that, well, if there's an all-powerful God who sets things up in such a way that the inevitable result of that is that a human at a certain point is going to make a such and such decision, then it would be unjust for that same being to condemn, to punish the human for making that decision. That's another one of his arguments. All right. We have been going for about an hour. Do we have other stuff to say about Hume?
I don't know that we do.
All right. Well, let's bring in Andy to talk about what his, since he is substituting on Sunday when I'm going to be gone for the Sunday night debate breakdown live stream. Let's hear what he has in mind.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Very excited about Sunday because we're doing something that's just like you, but not like you. As the scorpion said to the frog after he stung the frog as they were crossing the river, why did you do that? It's in my nature. So what is in my nature? The comic books. So we're going to watch a comic book debate where Peter David argues about the creative process with Todd McFarlane. It's a very famous debate. A lot of people haven't seen it, but they know about it because it was a big deal at the time. And like the kids these days, they don't know these things anymore. Yeah, but the old heads like me, I almost actually got to see that one live. I screwed up what time it was, so I wasn't actually in the room for that. But I that's how close I was to actually seeing it live. But anyways, we get to relive it. I got a couple of people that everybody might know, like Brenton Langle, who has done the debate reviews before, and Cole James Cash, who does the music that comes in. He's a big comic book fan, and if you guys don't know this, there's a character named Cole Cash from Image Comics, which came out right around the same time this debate happened, and whose name is his superhero name is the Grifter. So if you ever wondering what all that stuff is about him with Grifter, it's
I remember his one of his social media accounts. It was literally his name was Grifter. It was like Griff as the first name and Tur as the last name.
Yeah, well, that all came from a comic book. So we became fast friends because I realized that right away, and I name checked something about Wildcats, but I didn't indirectly say what it was, and he's just like, yeah, we just like immediately like that became friends. So then we got one other person joining us, a writer who I don't really know that well. His name is David Papose, I believe that's how it's said. I'm going to find out on Sunday. This is going to be exciting. But he is the writer of Spencer and Locke, Going to the Chapel, Grand Theft Astro, the OZ, Scouts Honor, and a bunch of other books. He's like an indie darling right now in comics. So it's kind of exciting to have him on. And we're going to take this, we're going to take your debate show and ratchet up the nerd shit.
Maybe a different kind of nerd shit, but yeah, which would be good too, so that you and Cole are both on, because as you mentioned, Cole is the one who gave us this music that we use for intro and outro. Not that he's playing every instrument or anything, but he had the recording, and he generously, let us use it for the show. And you, of course, are the one who makes all of those beautiful thumbnails for these consistently.
And we have an album coming out.
Yeah, you wrote. Yeah, you also do. Actually, I think a lot of album covers, right? I mean, that's something.
A few. I've done enough, but not a lot. But my very first piece I ever did professionally was was an album cover. So it's I do a few here and there. But
Yes.
Cole James Cash is a album coming out, and with FU, he's a rapper out of New York. And it's a love letter to LA gang scene and like that LA sound. And so I got to do the cover with another artist who is named, I think it's like Casa de something, and I'm blanking on it right now because it's not in front of me. So I apologize for that, but it looks great. I'm looking forward to seeing it whenever it actually comes out. So it's coming out soon.
Very nice. So yeah, so that's
this is the part where we plug.
Yes, it's the Sunday night debate breakdown. So Sunday at 8, and everything we do on this channel is at 8 Eastern now. So it's easy to remember. Although a week from Sunday, I think the debate breakdown is going to have to be at 8:30 because I'm going on Kenzo Shibata's show, which ends then. But on Monday for the regular episode, that is going to be Larry Sharp, who was the Libertarian candidate for governor of New York, is going to come on to argue with me. That's going to be the main show on Sunday. Might actually have Cole showing up in the post game for a while on Monday. I'm not too sure. And then on Wednesday, I promise that sooner or later we are going to get back to doing movie streams on Wednesdays. It's kind of on hiatus.
We could do Barbarella.
Yeah, we did just watch Barbarella.
We
That's
did.
true.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Andrew, have you seen Barbarella?
Not all the way through recently. I don't think I really ever watched it all the way through back in the day either, but
you're missing
I know
out.
it's been on TV when I was in the room.
It's a unique movie.
Yeah.
But also watched Swingers the other day, which have I think for the first time since sometime not very many years after it came out for me, which it's I don't know. I found it charming. I mean, I also liked all the 1996 stuff. I mean, it's like a weird coincidence that the culture was at its best when I was in my teens and 20s. But
always funny that.
Yeah, I know.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. But yeah. So it's on. But so the movie streams are going to be back before too long. Have actually. Toure Reed and our friend Jason Miles are going to come on at some point to do one on the thing, but that had to be that was going to be a little while ago, and I think Toure is on vacation, but maybe in late August, early September we'll do that. So we will go back to those at some point, but for this Wednesday. Since Matthew Sitman and Sam Adler-Bell for the Know Your Enemy podcast, they're friends, but they also did criticize the article that Daniel Bessner and I wrote about January 6th at Jacobin in the last episode of the podcast. So they're going to come on for a bit of a struggle session on Wednesday, and not going to call that a debate, but sip. Everybody can sip some nice bourbon and disagree in a genteel way, and then on Friday we will be doing another one of these.
And we'll try to come up with the topic before.
We always
Thursday night.
Yeah,
J. Andrew's always like, so.
Well, speaking of, if people do want some movie podcasts, this week, actually, just before the show started, there's a great conversation I had with Lee Phillips.
Oh yeah,
who's been a guest on here before,
mm-hmm.
and we talked the movie Ad Astra and really dug into the history of like sci-fi film.
Cool. No, that sounds great.
It's a great conversation. So that
Did
just
you
went
talk about
live.
Barbarella?
I don't remember that one coming up. I brought a ZPG for
very incomplete discussion of science fiction film, but fair enough. What's the name of the podcast you're doing?
That is Movie Night Extravaganza, and then I also did another one called Bad Takes, where it's bad films, and I watched. I made C. Derek Varn watch Gunman, and we ended up speaking for 2 hours about the history of the narco states.
All right, fair enough. So check those out. Lots of good stuff coming up. I will not see you on Sunday, but he will, and I will see you on Monday. Left is best.
Team Snoopy forever.